Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here, WilhiteWX.com. It's been a long Sunday for me, and so I'm a little late getting this video out. Keep in mind, as many of you know, I'm also a pastor, and so Sunday's a little difficult for me to sneak away and get weather done. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. This is a very busy Sunday for me, and I'm also fighting a cold, which doesn't seem to help on my energy level either. But finally had a chance here to look over the latest data, and man, I'm telling you, Tuesday around here in the Ohio Valley starting to look pretty doggone messy. And so let's just start diving into it here. Here's the Weather Prediction Center's probabilities for at least 4 inches of snow, and you see a slight risk here for a good chunk of Indiana. If you were to go up to the 8 inches, that's non-existent for here. You got to go up into the northeast before you get that. So we're not looking probably at a mega snowstorm here by any means, but there's a possibility that we could definitely get some heavy snow here for some decent-sized snowfall, a winter storm warning level snowfall possibly. The bigger thing that's concerning to me, especially for those of you down along the Ohio River, which myself included in this, is that we're under a slight risk for at least 1/4 of an inch of freezing rain. And of course, if you remember the Martin Luther King weekend storm that we had some sleet and freezing rain with that before we had some snow dumped on top of it. And man, that was a messy snowstorm. And for some of us, it looks like it could be sort of a repeat of that. Maybe not quite as much snow. We'll have to see. But nonetheless, a repeat in the messy situation with that. Let's go ahead and dive into the data and see what it's doing. First off, notice that we're going to have 2 waves that sort of rolls through here. Here's tomorrow afternoon at about 1 o'clock Eastern time. And you watch this wave of precipitation start to angle and head towards northern Indiana. This would be about 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, and you see that rolling through. In fact, as it rolls through, it may even come far south as maybe the US 50 corridor here in Indiana, as far south as Vincennes, Washington, and scooting on over. Cincinnati may get included into this as well. But then that quickly moves off. You could put down a little bit of some light accumulations there, absolutely. Some places towards the northern part of the state of Indiana could certainly get 3 or 4 inches out of this. You might get an inch or so, even a little bit south of Indianapolis. This will definitely put down some snows. The extreme southern part of the state probably gets missed on this, but we won't with what's coming behind it. Notice high pressure working in here, moving off to the east very quickly. And so by the time we come into Tuesday night, so this is Tuesday night at 7 p.m., and you've got it not moved in yet. There's timing differences on every model I'm going to show you here in a minute. But as you roll through quickly into the overnight hours, here's 1 a.m. and you've got a mess. And notice that the GFS has a nice little swath of freezing rain right along the Ohio River here, and then some snow component up to the north and a rain component down to the south. And that's the theme that you're going to find in all of these models. That's going to be a theme. And you notice that freezing rain line on the GFS hugs right along the Ohio River, some very heavy actual rain, a cold rain down to the south into Kentucky, and what could be some decent accumulating snows there on top of that. And then it's quickly gone by Wednesday during the afternoon time. Now let me show you the Canadian model. Very similar. It shows that first wave moving in here. Here you go, about 7 p.m. Monday evening, and it does angle it just a little bit further to the south, and so the whole state could get some light snow showers out of it, but nothing overly impressive. The further south you go, the heavier snows will be up towards the north. But then watch this as we go into Tuesday evening. Here's 7 p.m. on Tuesday evening, and then here's 1 a.m. And notice that the freezing rain line is a little bit, in this particular model, run on the Canadian, a little bit more into Kentucky, and it's a little bit more on the heavier side of the snow for us. And so there's a little variation in the model here as far on the modeling as far as to exactly where that line is going to set out between rain, freezing rain, and snow. And it's not perfectly locked into place yet. What I can tell you is that somewhere right along the Ohio River is where it looks like in general it's going to be. And all 3 of the modelings exist in that. The Canadian then has some heavy snow moving in for the duration. But you notice with this, Kentucky is mostly in the rain, except for a little bit of freezing rain mixed in here with that. Now let me show you the Euro, and the Euro also has a very similar idea. The good news is that the models are starting to dial into some reasonable agreement on this. And that first wave moves in here on Monday evening. Again, here's 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. This stays mostly to the north, and again, it's about Vincennes, the US 50 corridor. On northward, that's affected by this as you go through. Then as you come into about 7 p.m. tomorrow evening, not tomorrow evening, but Tuesday evening, excuse me, there it is to our west, and you watch as that quickly overtakes the area. Watch how the Euro just does this. You've got a freezing rain component and a heavy freezing rain component, even with some sleet there in orange starting to mix into. And again, right along the Ohio River, and as I move that forward in time, some of you right along the Ohio River could end up with a very heavy freezing rain event, and it turns to some decent snows beyond this as well, some decent snow rates with this, and then before it quickly moves out. Again, through this, you notice that areas closer to the Ohio River in Kentucky get the freezing rain with this, and not that far into Indiana. It looks very, very similar to the Canadian here. The GFS is the one that's the most north with the rain line. But for you in southern Kentucky, it's mostly just a rain event. So if you're watching here from, say, Bowling Green or the London area, and even closer towards Lexington, it may end up being just a rain event to you. Euro indicating a little bit of light freezing rain before it goes to all rain beyond that as well. But modeling not really excited about snow for Kentucky. So let's take a look then at the freezing rain first. Well, the GFS, as I said, is the furthest one north, and the GFS has some pretty ugly totals with this. You're talking about the potential for up to a 1/4 inch of freezing rain accumulation here in portions of the area, 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch of freezing rain. Not out of question with this. If you look at the Canadian, let's just hope the Canadian totals don't pan out at all, because it's absolutely nasty. But again, you notice the Canadian totals angle that a little bit more into Kentucky. In fact, Lexington would get a ridiculous heavy freezing rain event out of this, and so would E-Town down here, and Louisville for that matter as well. And then tapering off to not much as you go here into Indiana with the Canadian idea. Again, there's going to need to be some adjustments that is made to this, but I'm just using this to illustrate, folks, the potential for some freezing rain is most certainly real with this one. I think there's going to be that component. Further north you go, the less of a chance that you're going to get for that. But for those of you in extreme southern Indiana, right along the Ohio River, I think some freezing rain is going to be a real threat for you. And if I take a look and I just show you what the Euro is doing here as well, I don't have a total map, but I can show you in 6-hour increments that as you start here on about 1 a.m. Wednesday night, there's a nice little swath of freezing rain sort of hugging right along the Ohio River. Over the next 6 hours, it moves through, and you see some heavy ice totals there again showing up as you get closer towards Louisville and Lexington on points to the east there. Really quickly, the Euro is showing a little bit of sleet moving in, but the sleet line here is just a very thin band mixing in with this as well. So I think the modeling is suggesting for us that it's really more of a freezing rain than it is a sleet threat. I hope that's wrong, because a freezing rain will stick to power lines and cause problems with that, whereas sleet, on the other hand, won't. It's just ice pellets. It's going to stick to the ground. And we ended up having more sleet on the Martin Luther King weekend storm that we had. It looked like we were going to have a lot of freezing rain, and then the high-res models got involved, the day of right before, and it indicated more of a sleet threat, and that's what it turned out to be. I really hope if we're going to get ice, that's what it turns out to again. And we're just going to have to see. That's all depending on the thermal profile of the atmosphere. We'll be able to model that a little bit more clearly as we get closer to the event. But right now, we're still 2 days away from the event unfolding for us. And 2 days in, we're still looking at a pretty doggone nasty mess out of this. And so if you take a look then at what the snowfall maps do for this, again, the GFS, as I said, was the most north with the freezing rain, so it gives you the least amount of snow here, at least for Kentucky, not getting in on much of the snow, less than an inch as you head over this particular area here. But then really quickly, the first blue line starts at your 2 inches, and so you see just a very sharp cutoff here as you go north with this. And actually, some places in Indiana could see 5-6 inches of snow out of this. So that's a pretty decent winter storm here on the GFS thinking. If you look at the Canadian has really backed off. It did have very high totals, but it has backed off to much more reasonable. Again, a pretty sharp snow cutoff here too, but you notice that the snow rain cutoff line is a little bit further down into Kentucky with this than what you saw on the GFS model here. And you're looking at really about a 3 to 4 inch swath of snow over most of Indiana with this one. And then if you look at the Euro is the least amounts on the snow, and there's a pretty steep cutoff here as well. If you really want to get into about an inch or so, well, the inch or so plus comes up in here, and you don't get much further south of that, unfortunately. Again, this is a heavier freezing rain event on the Euro for this area in here, so that really cuts down on the potential totals that you could get out of this. And so if we just kind of make a sensible analysis of this, let me sort of go back and suggest that maybe the Canadian may have a more sensible reason than what the others do. I do think that anywhere, I'm going to highlight the area, anywhere in here is where I think the best chance some freezing rain is going to come in first. And again, I do think a tenth or two of an inch of freezing rain is certainly possible with that. And so if we just sort of, type this out, we'll say 0.1 to 0.2 inches. 0.1. Well, if I could get number lock to work, to 0.2 of freezing rain there, and then about 1 to 2 inches of snow on top of that is sort of what my current thinking is at this point for this area into here. Now, the further north, now again, you see the Canadians showing a little bit more than this, but if you take a blend of the models, that's what this would sort of come up with in this area. And then the further north that you go into that, if we just sort of shade this area up into here, well, the totals are going to be higher than 1 to 2 inches. That's where you may end up being in a 2 to 4 plus inch band of snow as you head on a little bit more towards the north, because you're not going to have to worry about the freezing rain. Now, those are some very early totals. We're only 48 hours out right now. I hope tomorrow to be able to get my first call snowcast map. But these are my early thoughts as of this point for right now. So, again, the models will come in. In fact, we should actually have the NAM rolling in right now. And so before I turn off the video, let me just excuse me, go into the NAM. I apologize. This cold is really kicking my rear end, guys. But let me just show you the NAM here. Yes, the NAM is 84 hours in. So let's take a look. This was the band that moved through this evening. There's that first band coming in tomorrow night. So this would be at about 21 Z's, about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And you can see, snow close to the US 50 corridor sort of goes right in here. And as you advance this in time, you do have some snow coming in across the area with this. Stays well north of the Ohio River with this, but then it's quickly gone. But again, from about the US 50 corridor north, so that's pretty consistent with the other data. And then you go into the afternoon on Tuesday, and we're dry until you get late into the evening. And here's 7 p.m. the evening, some snow working into the north. You got rain starting to break out down to our south, but watch here. Yep, starting to mix in with some snow, and you start to see patches of freezing rain. And look at this. The NAM looks very splotchy with this, with its totals coming through. But, keep in mind with this, before this event, you're at hour 54. And really, from about 36 hours on south is where the NAM really starts to shine. And let's look at the high-res NAM just for fun, because the high-res NAM is oftentimes a lot better than what the lower-res regular NAM is. Let's just see this again. There's that snow moving off to the north. It has the snow a little bit further to the south here, maybe as far down south as the Jasper area before it starts cutting off. That quickly moves through here, and then watch then. Let's just see what this does. Rain starts to break out. This won't go through the entire duration of the event. Here's 0Z. There's some rain starting to come in. But we'll get some hints. Yep, you get some hints coming in here that there is going to be. Well, look at this. The purple here is a sleet component. There's your freezing rain component in the red, and there's snow here in the blue, and then there's rain down here with this. And so the new high-res NAM gives us a mixture of all of this as well. If we're going to have ice, I'd much rather see that sleet component moving in here. Again, this doesn't see the entire event. It only goes through the early durations of this event. But just for fun, let's go ahead and look really quickly at the new data. Let's look at the snowfall first here. And you can see, well, let's just take it to hour 60 in instead of advancing it through there. And you can see, excuse me, this is through early on. This is only through the start of the event, but you can see some decent snows showing from US 50 and north, and you're starting to get some snows showing up here beyond this. But let's look at the freezing rain, and let's look at the concern with this. And well, there you go. There you go. There's possibly a tenth of an inch or so of freezing rain, and it's a very narrow band. As I said to you, it's a very narrow band of freezing rain showing up here. I don't have the sleet component onto here, but I guarantee you would see a little bit of a sleet accumulation in there as well. So regardless, you've got a mess coming our way. And of course, it's 9:55 Eastern time right now, so the new GFS or Canadian are not in. I'll look at that before I go to bed, and I might post an update if anything changes there. But the bottom line is, folks, we got a mess coming our way, either one. And I think right now, where the Weather Prediction Center of the National Weather Service has placed the greatest chances for that 1/4 inch of freezing rain is certainly well placed right now. It looks like I do think that if I were going to draw it personally, let me go to red here so you can show it out. I think I would probably draw it more like this at this point, because I do think there is a chance that that freezing rain could come a little bit further south into Kentucky if the Euro and the Canadian are right. That's the region that I would draw with a freezing rain threat. Could we all get a quarter of an inch out of that? Hopefully we don't. But a light glaze certainly could be anywhere in that area of red that I have drawn. And then beyond that, you've got some snow that you're going to deal with as well. So I'll keep you updated, folks. I'll have another one of these videos for you tomorrow evening after the data has come in. Hopefully by tomorrow evening, I'll be able to get a snowcast out and start to get a little bit more specific on numbers. That's it for this update, folks. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite. Be sure to subscribe to these on YouTube. Click that bell so that you can get notifications when I do these as well. And be sure to visit the webpage, willhitewx.com, for blog posts and much more to go with this. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.